Hey everybody, it's Scotty from Scotty's Record Shop with an artist feature. I do them once in a while. I'm going to probably try to do a few more of them than I had been in the past because I really get into collecting as much of a certain artist. I get fixated on one group and I just try to get everything I can by them uh, and then move on. Before I get into this though, as always, first and foremost, I want to thank everybody who's watching these videos, everybody who's subscribed to the channel. I really appreciate the fact that you guys take the time to watch these silly things. And hopefully you are at least amused, if not entertained. Okay, okay. The group in question today originally was named The Big Thing, and it took a while for them to become The Big Thing. But in the '70s, they were one of the biggest selling groups of the '70s. And actually, in the '80s as well, they sold quite a few records in the '80s. Lost quite a few members, had a lot of changes. We'll go through that. And what I'm going to try to do with these, there's like 20-something albums by Chicago. Chicago is the group in question. I'm going to try to show you the inner sleeves, and a little bit of everything. You know, I've taken all the sleeves off these things and the outer protective sleeves. So let's see if I can put my mousey down here. Ooh, hopefully that didn't scare you guys too much. Anyway, if you can notice over here, there's a hole. Quite a big hole. It's where all the Chicago stuff is. That's where it lives when I'm not listening to it. I am a big fan of Chicago. Always have been. Always will be. Although there's been periods in time where I'm, you know, I'll any chance I'll get to go see them, I'll go, because they're an amazing band live. If you ever get a chance to see Chicago live, even though it's not totally the original members, it's still quite the show. Anyway, 1967 they started off. They were The Big Thing. They changed their name to the Chicago Transit Authority, which got them into a lot of trouble. They had to change their name because the Chicago Transit Authority system was not amused. This was their first album, entitled Chicago Transit Authority. Put this baby up, it's gatefold. A lot of their albums, which was innovative at the time, a lot of their albums were double albums, matter of fact. And had your basic generic Columbia in a sleeve, and this was what it looked like. That's the old two-eyed Columbia label. Since this came out in '69, that was how it was pressed. A very interesting album. This is kind of an experimental album in some ways. Songs like "Free from Guitar," which a friend of mine who's a huge Chicago fan referred to that as controlled noise. It was just a real. It's hard for me to listen to that, but that is probably their heaviest album as far as rock and roll is concerned. Chicago Transit Authority. It got a lot of play on college radio, but initially it was not popular. Chicago has never been a critics band either. They have always been unpopular with the critics. My father-in-law was a music critic in Cleveland in the early '70s and got a chance to interview the band, and they were really, Terry Keith was really a jerk to him. And he understood why, but he liked Chicago, so he kind of felt that he was getting a bad rap, but that's the way it was. 1970, Chicago. It's not their first album. If you see this, it's not the first album. It's the second album. The first one called Chicago. The gatefold. And this is on the two-eyed Columbia as well, with the same. I don't even know if I've got the original sleeves in here, but yeah, the same inner sleeves. Anyway, boring you, showing you the same thing twice. So then we go to, and that's when the band took off, 1970. So much so that they were releasing singles from the first album, Chicago Transit Authority, and the second album. Because it just wasn't enough. And what had happened, there was such a demand, this album came out. Some people love this album, Chicago 3. It's not my favorite Chicago album. And although it has some really interesting work on it, Columbia had a hard time releasing singles off this. The song Free, which is a great song, is on this. Like I said, there's a lot of really good songs on there, but they went back to the Chicago Transit Authority album in 1971 and started to issue stuff off that because they just didn't feel. This had some lyrics And at this point in time, by 1971, we were on the Columbia label that you guys all know and love. You know that one, don't you? Down the road, Chicago would end up putting a lot of custom labels as well, which is kind of cool, kind of to coincide with the covers of the album. Again, for the third time, it's a double album. It still sold really well, though. Here we go with their fourth album, Live at Carnegie Hall. Let's throw away the 2-album format and put out a 4-album set. They were getting brave. This comes with, I'm going to regret pulling all this out, I think, but a booklet, lots of pictures of the bands. I'm not going to go through all the pictures, but it's really great packaging on this. What else do we got here? We got a poster, which I really don't want. This is in great shape, but I really don't want to. It's a great poster because it's got a really old picture. Oh, the heck with it. I'm going to open the whole thing. You won't be able to see the whole thing, but it's got a great picture of Carnegie Hall. Old picture of Carnegie Hall. It's a great poster. Because I'm showing you all this stuff, I know this video is going to run longer than I was hoping, and I apologize. Hopefully you enjoy this. I'll whip out one of the albums because obviously they're all 4 of them are the same. Great inner sleeves. Look at that. Really nicely done, and a custom inner sleeve right here. Needs to be cleaned. I haven't played this for a while, but that's Chicago. Here, I'll get back in there, you. Chicago 4, which, like I said, was a live album, live from Carnegie Hall. The band hated it. I'm not the biggest fan of the sound. In 1972, they recorded a live album in Japan, which has recently circulated on CD. I think in Japan, Robert Z, my buddy Robert Z, you may know this, because you've got all these Japanese import stuff. I don't know, it must have been issued on vinyl in Japan at one point in time, back in the 70s, but Chicago, that is a killer album. Live, they rock. It was 1972. It was actually for this tour right here, Chicago 5. For once, they actually went to a single album format. And I will show you this inner sleeve. Nice lyric inner sleeve. And a custom label, which is very nice. A lot of these albums, some of these albums, I should say a lot, a fair amount of them came with booklets. Chicago always really did a great job, in my opinion, of packaging. We got an excellent, I believe this was the poster that came with this, but a great poster of the members of the band. I'll show you this one. It folds open. I believe this was the original poster with this one. I have some posters floating around the house, and I've actually lost track, honestly, of what posters went with which album, because it's been so long, some of these. Okay, this one came with a poster as well, but I don't think I've got the poster in here. Maybe I do. Yes, I do. Okay, I'm doing good. All right, Chicago 6. By the way, I'm taping this at the end of July of 2013, just in case you know that if you're watching it right away, but if you're watching it 2 or 3 years from now, the end of July 2013. This was the album that was #1 in the United States 40 years ago, 1973, at the end of July. 2 huge hits off this album. They had not yet had a #1 hit, though. Kind of weird. Let's fix that. Let me show you what's in here for goodies. Okay. Poster, which I'm not going to unfold. Another poster of the band. I say I'm not going to unfold it, and I'm unfolding it. I don't really want to. Just trust me. It's a poster of the band. You can see somebody's face here. Okay. An interesting inner sleeve. Again, they really took the time, and I appreciate that, for great packaging. This was one of the first Chicago albums I ever had. I had the cassette of this back, bought it in a pawn shop about 1977 or 1978, and something about this album, it's not a bad album, but it just seems like it was not finished. It's the only way I can describe it. A lot of people love it. It's like, oh, it's one of their better albums, but there's great song potential on it, but I don't know. Seems almost like it was unfinished. But still a good album. I mean, a lot of these albums, too, you can find in dollar bins all around the country. And if you find a Chicago album, pick it up, give it a try. You know, if you've only known Chicago, this album is going to be a good example of, if you only know Chicago from 25 or 624 or Saturday in the Park or some of their later hits from the 80s, this album will be a really interesting surprise for you. Although it did have a couple of hits, it was very poppy at points. Chicago 7, there was some fusion stuff on here that was amazing. It showed just really what this band could do musically. They were and are still an incredible band musically. That's the inner sleeve. I'll show you both. I'll only show you one here. I want to hold this up correctly. Columbia. Matching again the whole themed packaging. Very nice. Yeah, this Chicago 7 is really just an interesting album. They will really getting into some fusion-ish type music. I enjoy it. Chicago 8, which has a couple of songs on it that I really, really dig. Harry Truman and Old Days. Some people pan this record. It's not that great. I really like this record. This is the back part of the sleeve and the front part of the sleeve, inner sleeve, and some really nice, there you go. Again, some of these need to be cleaned. You know, you're going to probably comment, oh my god, those records are dirty. You know, some of them haven't been played for a while. And they definitely need the record machine treatment. There's no doubt about it, right? Okay. 1975. This was really the first Chicago album that I got that I really went, oh, I love this band. Still one of my favorite albums, even though it's a greatest hits. Just something about this album that I just absolutely love. It's a later pressing. I've gone through a couple of copies of this. And the other thing about the later pressing of this, I got to show you. The inner sleeve was a colored, designed inner sleeve. Not inner sleeve, but label. But on this one, because it's an 80s pressing, it's just this Columbia thingamajiggy. One of these days, I'm going to find an original. This is in such great shape, I had to pick it up. It was $1. One of these days, I'll find an original pressing of that from 75, but I absolutely love that album. Chicago 10, 1976. Chicago, after being together for 7 years, putting out albums for 7 years, finally, they got a #1 hit with If You Leave Me Now. It was a great song. This one came with a lyric inner sleeve. Again, some of these may have had, like I said, I've got posters all around the house. Not necessarily hanging, but posters. So I can't remember if this came with a poster or not. And here we go. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's up or down. It looks the same anyway. The inner sleeve for what is commonly referred to as the Chocolate Bar album. Because, well, you can probably tell by looking at it like this, but I don't even know if this will come out correctly. But if you open it up, I'll try to pan it like that. It's a chocolate bar. Isn't that cool? Makes me hungry. Okay. Chicago is on top of the world. They just had a #1 song. They've had several #1 albums. So let's put out an album. Not a bad album at all either. Chicago 11, 1977. I'm going to fix my thing here. Yeah. Screensaver keeps kicking in. Not that I could see to begin with, but it's annoying. And the huge single off this was Baby What a Big Surprise. It also has some other great songs. Take Me Back to Chicago. It's a good album. It's an atypical Chicago album. I don't love Chicago albums for the most part all the way through. I cherry pick a lot of the stuff. And of course, again, another great custom inner sleeve. Unfortunately, this was the last album with Terry Kath, or Keith, however you want to pronounce his name, in February-ish or so of 1978. He, and I'm using this word loosely, accidentally shot himself. But not to spread rumors or anything, but there's been, I mean, he may have been broken up with his girlfriend or his wife at the time. He had been up for several days, probably due to the enormous amount of cocaine that was in his system, which was common for musicians of that day. So he may very well have accidentally shot himself, but it was such a tragedy. Chicago didn't waste a lot of time, though, coming back. And for once, they didn't call it a number. This album was called Hut Streets, 1978. Still on the Columbia record label. I can't remember the gentleman that picked up the guitar and did some lead vocals on this as well. He was really good. He only stuck around for a few albums. The inner sleeve for that, I mean the custom label, same on both sides. And the inner sleeve, very nice. Hits off of this was appropriately Alive Again was the first single, which I guess was their statement after Terry Kath's death. And No Tell Lover. There's a lot of other great songs on this album. I go for this album quite often. It's poppy-ish, but it's a good listen. Chicago crashed at the end of the decade. I don't know what happened. They changed management for Hut Streets in '78. They changed management. They changed a lot of things, and it really didn't work out for them. Chicago 13, in case you're keeping track. They went back to the number system on this one. And yeah, it does have an inner sleeve. 1979. This was they're kind of going downhill. Although I for a buck, if you want to get this album for a buck, go for it. It's not a, it's kind of got some disco-ishness to it, like a lot of other people. Don't point fingers. The Rolling Stones were doing disco, in the late 70s. Kiss, okay? I Was Made for Loving You. Pretty disco. Not that it's bad, but it's pretty disco. Anyway, 1980 brought us Chicago 14. This cover is a trip to look at. Like, what do you see in this cover? I'm not going to hold it long enough for you to decipher out of it, but fairly plain inner sleeve for this one. And as far as a inner, okay, very typical. Chicago was in big trouble at this particular point in time. They were not selling well. Columbia Records said, you know what, we've had you for over 10 years, but you know what, thank you, but no thank you. You guys can go wherever you want to go. They issued a greatest hits record to say goodbye to them. Chicago's Greatest Hits Volume 2, which I guess you could call Chicago 15, which I think the band considered 15 as well. This is Columbia didn't spend a lot of time. The generic inner sleeve, they didn't spend a lot of time on this one. They just wanted to get it out and get rid of the band, basically. It's an okay best of. However, in 1982, Chicago got really popular again. We're going to get to that, but I want to deal with the rest of some of the Columbia stuff. This is another best of package or collection. If You Leave Me Now, just a, Columbia owned the rights, generic inner sleeve, generic Columbia label. Not a bad these collections aren't bad, but if you really think about the motivation behind them, it was just Columbia trying to make more money off of them because, like I said, in '82 they were getting popular again, and I think Columbia was kind of like going, oh, maybe we shouldn't have let them go. Take Me Back to Chicago. Again, generic sleeve and generic label. I'm not even going to waste your time. This is not a bad album, though. Take Me Back to Chicago. It's a compilations, but it's got some interesting stuff on it, Again, any of these you see for a buck, grab them. Why not? They signed with Full Moon Records. I believe it was a subsidiary of Warner Brothers. So anyway, there we go. This album really took off. They did really, really well. Full Moon label. two huge hits off this one. Trying to hurry up. I'd hate to have to shoot this video over again, but I think my battery's going to die. A couple more albums. Chicago 17, by the mid-80s, these guys were doing just A-OK. At this point in time, they were on Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers picked them up, and for good reason. They were making some serious money. In 1974, Peter Cetera, the bass player, said goodbye, and he left the band, which was really too bad. Chicago 18, yeah, first album without Cetera. Blowing through these again kind of quickly because, well, I fear that my battery is going to die on me. And it would really be a bummer if I had to reshoot this again. One more, okay, guys? Chicago 19 is the last one on vinyl that I have. I have a bunch of stuff after that. Again, at this point in time, even up to Chicago 20, they were doing really well. This is on the Reprise late 80s Reprise label. Okay, guys, so that's my Chicago collection. I really, really appreciate you guys taking the time. I know this one took a while, but I thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns? I know there's some stuff that there was a live Chicago thing at the Toronto Peace Festival that got issued. I have that on CD. I didn't bother with the multiple vinyl pressings of it. Multiple bootlegs and stuff like that I have as well. But that's my vinyl Chicago collection, at least on album. Alrighty? Until next time, everybody, peace and love.